Welcome back, everybody. Our next presenter is Douglas Taylor. Now, if you saw Douglas walking down the street, hey, he's no different than anybody. Okay, good-looking guy, but no different. You'd have no idea of what is in his head and in his heart and what he has experienced. And we're privileged here today because we're going to hear from a man that, look, Doug has a real hard, tire-kicking bent, hard scientific edge, wants answers. But at the same time, he's a man that recognizes big time the spiritual side of the phenomena. And then when we combine that with the fact that he is an artist, dare I say an extraordinary artist, I think he's going to be able to really allow us to go into his experience. It's going to be a treat. It's going to be a ride. Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas Taylor.
Thank you, Bob. Well, hello, everyone. Is that too loud? Am I blowing you out? I just really want to thank all of you who are here for coming out to be a part of my presentation. I feel very, very humbled to be able to be here, and I feel like this is really what my purpose in life is all about. And if I can speak at a conference of this nature, then I feel I'm fulfilling a specific purpose that is incredibly important, not just to me, but to my own progression into a more intelligent perspective of life. And I know when you look up here and see me, you're thinking, well, I don't know who Douglas Taylor is. Anyway, what's with the bushy blonde hairdo and the 70s look? I mean, this guy looks like he just walked out of the, Gidget movie. Well, that's all part of my identity. We all have an identity. We call it ego. That's been one of my fascinations, has been the psychology of the mind, how it works. And believe me, I will get into the UFO aspect of this whole presentation. But it's important for each one of us to think of ourselves as who we really are. What is our identity? What do we identify with as being this personality that we are walking around, communicating with? And most of it's based on familiarity to people, places, and events that we see in a repetitious manner. And so it becomes sort of a monotone type of lifestyle, to where you're just pushing the buttons on the gambling machine. Although I saw some pretty cool ones out there, the ones at Star Trek and the prophecies of Nostradamus. I don't know if you can get any of those on there by pushing the buttons, but I know you'll lose a lot of money. And since they're not doing the event here next year, I guess we can kind of talk about how the fact that those things are just going to suck your money up, and unless you're really, really lucky. But the important part of what I'm trying to describe here today is that each one of us are capable of lifting off. We saw the ship come in, right? Did anybody see that on the video? You're all talking, right? Okay, well, next time we'll choreograph that differently so that you're watching the video that I spent 10 years ago. I couldn't even turn on a computer, and now I can turn one on. And it took me months to do that, and nobody even saw it. But that's all right, because I got a bunch of other stuff that you're going to have to look at. But anyway, again, I really, really feel honored to be here. I think Bob and Nicole and you're really the reason I'm here. even though you don't know it, like I said, you know. He looks like kind of a strange person. I mean, you know, he's no stranger than maybe any other people walking around this place, but he, you know, he's an artist. That's kind of in your face, you know. What's he trying to do? Does he think he's some kind of great person or something? You know? Does he think he's a great artist? No, I don't. In fact, when I recently had a gallery showing in San Clemente, where I live, I didn't sell one painting. I probably shouldn't say that because now nobody's going to even think my paintings are worth a damn. But they were buying this one guy's artwork, and I don't want to, you know, get into putting down somebody else's expression, but it kind of looked like somebody gave Satan a paintbrush and he went up and he blotched on this canvas and people were just going bananas over it. I mean, that was my impression. And they looked at my work and they go, oh, what in the hell is that? Oh, that's weird. That's strange. No, but I mean, you know, it's all a part of the process of being able to accept the level of where you're at and how you react to other people's opinions of you. Because in reality, any reactions that you have are giving you something, some information to look at. And I'm talking about these factors before I get into the presentation because this is the important part of this whole UFO phenomenon in my own perspective. I mean, we've heard about the government cover-ups. We've heard about, you know, all these different presentations about different people's experiences. And so my experience is one that is incredibly powerful to me. And I hope to be able to present it in a way that it will lift the people in this room up so that they also will see that there is a great and tremendous purpose to our lives and to being here. We share many things in common, you know, especially the people in this room. Basically, we're all interested in UFO phenomenon. Basically, we're all stuck on this godforsaken planet. But that doesn't have to be that way. We can change that. And that's what my presentation is about, is how I have gone through my own particular journey and began to find the steps that I needed to take to develop my mind so that I could go aboard that craft, so that I could lift myself up. Because of the whole important aspect of that walking into that craft is the mindset that you have. Because, I mean, how many people in here would like to travel to another planet? Okay, we'd all like to go to another planet. But would it be like the Avatar movie when we get there? Are we going to be looking for the unobtainium? Now, what unobtainium, that's a great concept. It's like you can't ever get it. I mean, you can't get it through, you could get all the money in the world. I mean, I'd like to have part of the money in the world, but if you had all the money in the world, you're still not going to be happy. So it's unobtainium. They're looking for something that you're not going to find in that particular product or in that particular so-called sense of security. Because the real sense of security comes when you have developed an integration with an intelligent field of information which encompasses a true understanding of the progression of our own mind and consciousness. So a little bit about me. When I was young, I was very interested in science until I started going to school. You know, I mean, I'd go to the science clubs and stuff, and I was fascinated with it. And after being in that school environment for a while, I realized I hate this place. This place is like a prison. And so after that, I started surfing and found that that was my escape, that was my freedom, that was my way of connecting with nature. And also, then I would just be spending my time when I was at school always looking at the flags. You know, not because I was so patriotic, but because I knew when the flag was blowing a certain direction, the waves were going to be good, so I'd get the crap out of there and go get my friend and my surfboard, and we'd ditch school and go surfing. So, you know, as a whole, surfers are not very good environmentalists. You know, you think they would be, but no, they're really not. And so there is a movement to try to help people to understand the importance of that beauty, of expressing that beauty, of being able to interact with that beauty that they don't realize may not be there in the future for the future generations. And so that's critical. That's important. And that's why I want to be able to both appreciate it and be able to express it through my own methods and means. And the creativity that everybody has innate within them is something that I think you'll find as I go through my little presentation here is really a fascinating psychological process that throughout the ages we can look back and see these individuals who were creatively inspired were really the way showers in many ways, although oftentimes they didn't understand the process, and so they would have a difficulty in balancing. Somebody like Vincent van Gogh couldn't balance the transcendence that you can feel when you're tuning into that creative side. Does that make sense? Is that kind of like over the top? And then the depression that you feel when you have finished the project and you're back in a position where now you have to start a new project. So that's what's so important about what we're talking about, is that to be proactive, to continue to move yourself forward is a continuous mental process of using your mind in a way that is really intelligent. So with that, we will get started here. Now everybody has seen, as we move into the future, the incredible photographs that we're getting from the Hubble. Is there any sound? I'm sorry. Yeah, that's better. I have some sound files in this that I think kind of help everybody, because I want this to be sort of a, I guess you could call it a visionary journey to other planets. Oh, that's what I did call it. Okay. So anyway, the Hubble Deep Field, absolutely incredible. I'm sure most of you are very aware of it. Astronomy has been one of my fascinations, although again, when I got into the astronomy class in college, oh God, I just hated it. It was like all numbers and math, and I'm more of a visual person, you know. My brother was a mathematical genius, so he went to work for some oil company. Now he's rich, which is good for me because I'm poor, so when I need money, I can borrow it from him. And he already told me I could do that. Because this has been a bad year for carpenters, believe me. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the positive things that are going on and can go on with each one of us. So this photograph here, does everybody realize what they photographed when they took the Hubble Deep Field? They've done several of them now, and they're getting more and more incredible. But it was a section of the sky that was so tiny that it would be maybe the size of your fingertip that had nothing in it. It was just dark, you know, way out there. And they focused their lens on that for 11 days, picking up whatever light they could, the way that these incredible cameras work. And when they got the photographs back, oh my God, look at this. The universe is bigger than we thought. What a surprise. There's like galaxies, thousands and thousands of galaxies in this little tiny patch where we didn't think there was anything. Does that sound familiar? It's kind of the way science has slowly evolved, people being stuck in the dogma of a specific belief system, and then all of a sudden something happens that kind of creates a new paradigm of awareness. And so I think the Hubble is just such a fantastic relationship to that. And that's a very, very fascinating photograph. And if we got like 200 billion galaxies that they know of, I don't even know if there's a number, and they are now beginning to find planets because they have the optics and the ability through some very unique techniques to perceive the little glitches in the stars where they can realize that these planets are affecting the actual rotation of the star, the movement of the star. And they're starting to find planets. And oh, another big surprise, you know? There's other planets out there. Well, that is really in the past because we're in the future. I think everybody in here is living in the future, and that is so fantastic. I felt so awesome being here in this group, even though I haven't really been walking around talking a lot to people. You know, none of you are all that friendly anyway. No, just kidding. I'm always been kind of a, you know, kind of a shy person, although now I'm older. You know, I'm starting to reach my 60s, and I found that when you get older, you have basically one perk. There's a lot of downsides, probably more than I could name. But the one perk is people realize that you're old and you are going to say things and you can be obnoxious and they're just going to go, he's old. They're not going to come and beat you up. They're just going to say, he's old. I mean, I used to do that. I still do. I talk about my friend. I mean, we're talking about somebody. My wife's going, wow, what the heck was Al talking about? He's a friend of mine. He's in his 70s. You know, and he's very much, you know, just says his mind. And of course, and then they repeat the same, you know, oh, I just heard you tell me that, Al, 5 minutes ago. Well, I didn't think you heard me. And so anyway, I told my wife, I go, and she's going, well, you know, what's with Al? You know, he's old. Well, now you can say that about me. We got to get moving here. Oh, whoops, where'd that come from? That was a computer, what do they call it? Computer malfunction. Okay, this is Puerto Rico. This is the only photograph I have when I was in Puerto Rico in 1978 when I was taken aboard the craft. I'm not in a craft in the picture, sorry. I've had to recreate the events around the picture. I'm sorry, the events around the experience because I did not have a camera at that time when I was in the craft. As a matter of fact, I didn't even get a camera until a few years ago. And like I said, when we were there, we were just having fun surfing in this incredibly beautiful place. It was such an adventure. And at that time, I had already, from my youth, been having what is commonly known as out-of-body experiences in my sleep state. So, you know, I realized that the physical body was not the actual me, the real person, that I had lifted up one time and I had actually turned around and I saw my body lying on the bed. I mean, I used to get up, this happened for about 3 or 4 years. I was in deep research, and I would wake myself at 3 o'clock in the morning, every morning, when I was about from 18 to about 21, to keep track of what was taking place because it was so fascinating. But I'd always be in the same area that I lived in. I'd be able to go through the walls, you know, move through. And one time I actually decided to be really brave and try an experiment. So I moved myself out where I was living at that time on Sunset Island in Orange County. And there's Pacific Coast Highway is right across the little bay that I was on. And so I floated myself over out into the streets with the cars coming. And I go, wow, this should be interesting, you know. And so I'm standing there, and here comes this car, full speed, and I'm going, I know that this car's not going to hit me. I know this car's not going to hit me. I'm not in my physical body. And sure enough, it scared the holy crap out of me. I mean, I was just like, boom, back in my body, laying on my bed, sweating, going, oh my God. It seemed real, you know. But the car would have, and did, just go through whatever the energy form was, the apparition, whatever you want to call it, that was floating out there. Even maybe a figment of my own mind, you know, expressing itself in a certain way. I mean, how do you really analyze scientifically something so subjective as out-of-body experiences? It's very difficult. Now, this is the area that I was at. This is Sandy Beach, right here. This is the house I was staying in. And if you look closely, you'll see somebody just got beamed up into that spacecraft. Now, as I said, 10 years ago, I learned to turn the computer on. Now, I know how. So, excuse my graphics if they look a little funny. But the idea is, obviously, I was beamed aboard a craft when I was in Puerto Rico on a surfing trip. Had no real relationship to UFOs at that time. I mean, I always liked Star Trek. I always loved astronomy. But I was very much of a skeptic. Did anybody see Dr. Lear's movie last night? Wasn't that great when he had the skeptic on sitting there? And he was like showing him all this, and he turned the tables on him. Oh, that was awesome. Good job, Dr. Lear. And so anyway, this is kind of what I can, in my own way, present and hopefully build on this experience so that it makes sense to you as some sort of reality, maybe something way far out for a lot of people, but for others, maybe you'll be able to kind of connect with the importance of what this event in my life meant to my future, because it was incredible. It is absolutely incredible. That's Jorge's head right there, by the way, Jorge Martin. Whoa! That's who I was looking at. All of a sudden, I was actually laying on my bed after I came in from surfing. I'm glad I wasn't driving a car or something, you know. And I had that familiar feeling when I've had these out-of-body experiences. A lot of times I'll feel this intense vibration. And it's that psychic body, all the frequencies that make up you and who you truly are. And it's not a sound you hear with your ears, it's a sound you feel with your consciousness, so to speak. So I felt like myself, I was just pure energy, and then all of a sudden, instead of, you know, floating around like I was so familiar with in the room, I was standing in front of these 7 beings who were all looking at me with the most incredible compassion and sense of love. And I felt so uplifted. I felt so completely, it was like I was going to jump out of my skin, you know. If I had skin at that time, I'm not sure. You know, I don't know if I was there in a physical way or not. I'm not going to, you know, that's up to everybody else's. My wife says I was, so who's to argue with her? And so standing there, I began to get telepathic communication from this individual right here, kind of spooky looking. This is my painting. I did a very quick illustration. I've got to go back and redo this whole thing. Eventually I will. But painting, you know, this many figures is kind of a lot of work, and I do enough work as it is as a carpenter. But anyway, he just telepathically began communicating with me. Never had that experience before. And it was so simple and easy. And he began describing to me a little bit about this experience. You know, I wasn't fearful at all. I mean, I felt just totally and completely excited and uplifted. So that aspect of it was very unique because I felt this nimbus of power, and almost like somebody had plugged me into a battery. And I was being charged with this powerful energy that I hadn't really felt in that way before. And he continued to talk to me a little bit about the ship, about the way that it functions, that this is an experience that they give to many people as a way of helping those individuals on their own progression into a more intelligent aspect of living, and how to understand that we're not isolated, we're not alone, even though we may think we are. And as I was going through this conversation with him mentally, I started feeling really depressed. And when they were looking at me, it was like I could, it was like there was this telepathic communication and this psychic sense of being able to understand everybody's thoughts. And they were looking at me like, God, this guy's like a gorilla. I mean, primitive. This guy seems really primitive. But they knew that I was someone who had basically been caught up in a lot of negative aspects related to my lives, past lives, and that basically I was someone who was attempting in this lifetime to begin to work through some of those problems and to put myself in a more positive position on that progressive pathway into the higher understandings of consciousness. So it was like they could look right through me. I mean, I couldn't lie, I couldn't cheat. I mean, I'm so used to doing that on this planet, it was just like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not sure I could live in this kind of environment. My wife kind of does it to me a little bit, but I don't take it from her because, I just say, hey, I'm the man, I'm in charge. No. Now, as I was feeling this incredible drop after feeling that tremendous high, it's kind of like what they call manic depression, I just was feeling so down. I was like, oh my God, I'll never be able to live in a state of mind like these people live. Has anybody heard about the avatar phenomenon, where people are going and seeing the movie and getting totally depressed afterwards because they're so bummed out about having to live in this world? They're seeing what it's like in that world. I'd say that's probably kind of what I was feeling, like, oh my God, I got to go back to that God-forsaken place. Even though at that time all I was doing was surfing, and I thought I was having a ball. I mean, I didn't have any other worries. I did surf, and that was my life. And I was happy. But this individual basically looked over to this lady, and she kind of did this. I felt this light. I didn't really see it like that, but, artists get to do whatever they want when they're doing videos. But I felt it. I felt this light come from her eyes and just go directly into mine, and it was this beam of powerful healing energy. If I can even comprehend what powerful healing energy is, whatever it was, it made me feel totally uplifted again, like I was when I first came aboard. And she just smiled. And I found myself, this entire experience lasted about probably 15 or 20 minutes. But as I said, the charge from the battery of being in this craft, being with these 7 beings who I know were functioning on a frequency level that would have been, 1,000,000 trillion times higher than mine, I was lifted up because the positive always flows to the negative. You have the more, you can't get less into more. The more, the higher flows into the less. It's just a natural principle, if that makes sense. I didn't make that up. Magnets do that, And so then I found myself immediately going, can I go with you? Can I go with you? Please take me with you. I guess it wasn't that funny, but I wanted to go with them. And they said, no, you're not even, you're not ready to go with us, dude. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? No, they didn't say that, but, they just said, no, you're not ready to go. But it was kind of like, maybe someday you will be, if you are capable of comprehending and understanding all of the factors involved in this experience, even though it was a short little communication. But what did it really mean? What were the larger connotations of this experience? And again, as she looked into my eyes, in a sense, I'm doing a little bit of a representation of what I felt. And obviously, I can't say that I felt like my head was going through a galaxy, but it was very positive. It was like I was being initiated into a new step in my own evolution. And I'll never forget it. Even though I've repeated it many times, and sometimes you go, oh my God, am I going to have to talk about that again? But it's so important to me in the sense of my experience is no different than anybody else's experience, no more important, no worse, no better, no whatever. It's just my experience. So if I can share it with you in a way that somehow can be a positive source of information, then I feel I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing on this planet. Now this is a little test I want to give to everybody. Now, stare at the Earth in the middle. This is about perception. Stare at the Earth, focus on it, and you'll notice that the UFO will disappear. I swear if you do. If you focus directly on the planet, don't let your vision go away. You see the ship disappearing? I can do it up here. I don't know if it's working on these big screens. If you focus on the planet, the ship disappears. Did anybody experience that? No, yeah, no. Well, believe me, it'll happen if you looked at it. And what that represents is, although that's a visual perception, it represents how we're so focused on the various aspects of our material lives that the blinders of our perceptions do not allow us to see those things outside of the realm of what we're focused on. And so as everything is coming into us, to our senses, to our sight, our hearing, our taste, our touch, our smell, it's all waveform energies. And so those waveform energies, from when we're a little child, we begin to form them into basic symbolic forms in which we create a reality and establish it in agreement with other people. And that's kind of how we can get stuck. Because once we focus that vision on that particular physical dimension, then we're limiting the ability to see beyond it. That's what open minds is all about. Being able to open your mind to new perceptions. And that's what imagination. If you saw that video in the beginning, Albert Einstein basically stated, imagination is more important than knowledge. That's a big statement from somebody who was one of the most advanced scientific minds of our time. And it's very, very true. Imagination, imaging, image something, and there's nothing you can image in your mind that doesn't exist somewhere, even if it's just in your own thoughts. But those waveform energies Think about it. That's how we're recreating the world that we live in, by deciphering those according to what has already been established within our minds. So we're going to go into a little more deeper relationship of this as we go along. Now, where these individuals came from, I know everybody's always interested in specifics, and the specifics aren't really important in my opinion. Although I'm almost positive that I have a relationship with the Pleiades from some experiences that I've had, many experiences I've had since this initial experience. And I'll tell you something, those experiences, the feeling of joy, when you can, it's like if your mind had been allowed to have these weeds grow up into it for thousands and thousands of years, so it's so compact that it's like ready to explode. But that's your normal state of mind, so you don't notice anything unusual. Then to have somebody just come in and just clear it all away, and you feel what you're supposed to feel like. And it's a sense of freedom, of creativity, of joy that's just indescribable. Even though I'm trying to describe it, but it is really something. So the Pleiades has been known throughout history to have had an influence on our planet. Individuals coming from more advanced planets, more developed spiritually, technologically, scientifically, and with that specific development, they were capable of coming as teachers and helping us in civilizations in the past to develop along a certain line. You know, you see the way history, so-called, repeats itself, the ebb and flow of the so-called civilizations. Well, in my understanding, it's more of history isn't so much repeating itself, it's people are repeating the same patterns that they have already expressed in previous civilizations. So the positive side of the civilization is when everybody is under the influence of some great teacher or teaching to where they understand the real purpose in life, the positive sharing and relationship, the unity between all people. And the negative side is when the ego becomes overly distorted and people begin to want to take power. We don't know any of that in our society, do we? And those people who want to take power don't realize that they're actually doing more damage to themselves than to the people that they're controlling. So it kind of works itself out in the end, although, you know, we don't want to let them get away with it. You know, if I had Cheney up here right now, you know, I'd take him by the neck and just squeeze it and say, "You're an idiot," you know? No, just kidding. Yeah, I mean, there's probably people here who love Cheney. And so, you know, I'm sorry that I said that, but like, what I really should do is say this. I want to right now apologize for some of the things that I'm going to say, because now I can say whatever I want. I'm sorry, Cheney. I wouldn't really do that. Maybe just one little punch. No, I don't punch people. I'm afraid. They might punch me back. In his case, he'd probably hit me with a nuclear bomb or something. Okay, now we've got to go. Can we go to Puerto Rico? No, it's expensive. Anyway, Puerto Rico is such an incredible place where I had my experience. We went back in 2005 with Jorge, and we went to that radio telescope in Arecibo. If you've never been there, it's incredible. You've got to try to make it over there. We talked to the security guard. We were just walking around with Jorge, and he was just like taking us around, and everybody was just having unbelievable experiences. I mean, just these humble little people living in these villages talking about the UFOs, the ETs, the grays they've seen walking on the road. I mean, really, really amazing, with a lot of evidence to back it up, although that's not my presentation, so I'm not going to go there. But we did talk to this individual, Pedro Perez. According to him, large silver-plated metallic spheres, which did not emit any sound, was totally fixed in the sky in a position close to the radio observatory facilities until the moment it departed. And this was just the first guy we walked up to, you know. I mean, it was like we were just going in trying to see if we could get into place. And Jorge, I don't speak Spanish. Wish I did, but, you know, it's one of those things that some of us aren't capable of learning another language. Even though I lived in Mexico for a while. I learned uno cerveza. What else? I learned a few things. And, and also, donde está el banjo? And so he described to us this incredible thing that he saw, you know, and so we're just kind of going, this is the first guy we talked to, you know. I mean, that's amazing. Now, this was actually in 2005 when me and my wife went back there, and I hadn't been there since 1978. I mean, I always wanted to go back, but I'd been involved in really in-depth study of a lot of mental processes and understandings on how to develop my mind into a more progressive, intelligent perspective in relation to this great infinite intelligence, which that initial experience aboard the ship kind of inspired. So that was pretty amazing that the first guy we walk up to at the telescope starts telling us about this. And then another guy said, you know, the so-called ovnis, UFOs, are real. We have seen them here, so I don't have any doubts about that anymore. However, we have to find out where they come from, who are behind them, said the security officer. A second officer, Mr. Jose Velez, stated that he has made several observations of some large mysterious spheres of light shining with a bluish-white hue similar to the light emitted from electric arc welding. These objects approach the radio observatory and suspend themselves over the area, increasing and decreasing in size. Okay, now, were these guys just like making this up? I mean, they're the security guards at this place. Did they have some reason to lie about these things that they said they were seeing? Because I saw a couple of, at that time, I think it was Seth Shostak, or Shastak, whatever his name is. He was the one in charge of the SETI project. And he basically shut it all down and said, you know, hey, there's nothing happening out there, you know. So that goes back to that focus that I was talking about. You know, you're not going to see something that you don't want to see if it's so extreme that it's going to shake the boundaries or the foundation of your belief system. I'm not saying that would happen with him, but for the most part, that's a pretty common concept. That to be shaken at the core of your belief system is very traumatic, and it's difficult to deal with. And believe me, I've experienced it many, 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 many times. And it has to do with a lot of the relationships to some of the other factors that we'll get into as we go along. The psychic body, which we haven't really got into yet. Now, here's a fantastic statement, which I won't tell you who said it. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Whew. I should have slowed that down. But anyway, Albert Einstein, you saw the wonderful picture of him and the great mind that he was and the tremendous respect that I think we should feel for somebody who not only has the great intelligence, but also the compassion to understand the importance for humanity to be able to come to some sort of unified understanding that we all are basically created of the same substance, energy. And even though there's differences. We should use those differences to help each other understand more and to become more acceptant to the reality that everybody is different and that that's a unique and wonderful thing. And that we don't all want to be robots and everybody walking down the street, in a line. I guess that happens in England a lot. My wife was telling me, I guess David Icke talks about it sometimes. Somebody will walk over and they'll just stand somewhere, And all of a sudden a group of people will start lining up behind them. It's kind of like, oh, there must be something going on where that person's standing, so we should line up behind them and we'll get a part of it. No, I don't know. The English are strange people. I'm sorry, any English people out there. Remember, I already apologized. My wife's English, but she's used to the abuse. No, I'm just kidding. Nikola Tesla, the man, the myth, and mystery. Now, Tesla drawing showing potential energy source emanating from towers placed around the planet, drawing free energy from the ionosphere. Now, this is an individual, obviously, who was way, way ahead of his time, and it's just a shame that there wasn't more funding continued with the projects that he was developing at that time. His tower at Wardenclyffe in Long Island. And it is, in my viewpoint, the beginning stages of how these individuals are able to utilize energy and to be able to basically power their cities by tapping into the very universal forces that are flowing around us. Our planet's like a giant magnet. We know that for a fact. To be able to actually get that process working. I think there's going to be a video tonight about an individual. What is his name? Anybody know? Searle. Okay, so that's one example. Me and a friend of mine were doing, last week at the Conscious Life Expo, we're doing a presentation about Tesla. And it was funny because I had a little bit of video from the movie The Mystery of Nikola Tesla, which I felt really captured the essence of the person. It was amazing. And so I'm showing little video clips of it, right, in the thing. And everybody goes, "Is that actual footage?" And I go, "No, I'm not that old." And I don't think they had cameras back then. So anyway, you can see a friend of mine right now has what's called a Tesla vehicle. He takes me out and scares the crap out of me driving 100 miles an hour on these back roads behind his house. And costs $100,000. You can fit 2 people in it. And they better be under 40 years old. Under 40 years old, because it's like getting into some kind of weird cockpit. And your back's all scrunched over. And it's got 1,000 pounds of batteries in the back. So the technology, but he just plugs it in when he comes home. It's really amazing vehicle. You don't even hear it. When he cruises in, there's no sound. Because there's no, not all the explosions we have with internal combustion engines. So the technology is not my forte, so to speak. I'm speaking more from a philosophical standpoint of where we could be if we were willing to be a little bit more open-minded about the potential of what we could learn from individuals who are living on higher planets and who have, in many, many ways, shared their information with us, with individuals who are able to tap into it simply through inspiration, through intuition, through going on their craft and seeing it, in whatever way that comes about. It's a real factor. It's just a matter of people becoming open-minded enough and being able to break apart the monopolies that have set the entire world in a position where everybody's dependent on these various monopolies, and we've become so familiar and used to it that nothing else. My wife has a little garden that she grows. Could we live off that garden? Heck no. as this big economic crunch came about. I mean, the whole thing is so ridiculous, you know, when you think about it, the way we go through these cycles of ups and downs economically. But, you know, I was out of work for 3 months, and my wife didn't want me to talk about this. But I said, I'm going to get a tent, and I'm going to go live on the beach. You know, heck with the paying this rent, heck with all this overhead, heck with, you know, all of this crap. And of course, I would have been arrested immediately if I would have tried it. But the idea seemed really inviting at the time. It's like, yeah, I just want to be free of the grid, free of the, you know, the whole thing. But then I started thinking, wait a minute, I couldn't use my computer. I couldn't use my television. I wouldn't have radio. I wouldn't have this. I wouldn't have that. Those are all little accoutrements that I've become familiar and used to, and they're hard to give up. I would if I had to, if I didn't have any choice. But if I have a choice, I'll pay the $3-4 for gasoline and, you know, just kind of take it like everybody else. So anyway, Tesla's concepts and ideas were obviously incredibly futuristic, and that is an instance of somebody who is actually coming into this world from a much higher field of intelligence. In other words, he had that intelligence when he came in. Think of somebody like a Mozart. You know, at 3 or 4 years old, he's composing these complex pieces of music. Where's that coming from? You know, the skeptics would look at it and say, well, you know, he probably heard a melody or something when he was in the womb, and, you know, now that melody is being represented as part of his musical expression, or, you know. I mean, I don't know what their explanation would be, but to me it's obvious that he had that information when he came in. He already had that development, and he came in to express it, and he did. And so we all have that potential. We all have things that we've set up to do, come here to do, and it's difficult to do them because we get hammered by many blocks from the past, which is what I'll be getting into here as we go along a little bit more, but we'll keep it on a positive note. And so this is an example. Back here, well, back there, you can see the Tesla Tower, which I kind of made come forward. And this is a statement that Tesla made. The gift of mental power comes from God, divine being. And if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power. Nikola Tesla. In tune. What does that mean? We all have radios, televisions. If you tune those to a certain station, you'll get a certain amount of information, right? The frequency of that channel, the frequency of the receiver, focuses that information, and then it's re-depicted through the processes that we have, technology, as the picture and the sound coming from somewhere else. Our minds work exactly the same way. We're constantly tuning in to a specific frequency, a specific set of information, and oftentimes it's coming from a point where it's emotional reactive in a negative way. And so those are the things that on these higher planets, these more advanced planets, they've learned how to refine their mental processes so they no longer are being influenced by those negative reactions. In other words, they've learned how to control, and that's kind of a bad word to use, but how to focus their minds so that it's always functioning on this more positive relationship and not going to the point of where, you know, like, say like at the UFO conventions here, you know, somebody's going, well, that guy was, you know, an idiot. He doesn't know anything about what's going on, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and this guy was, you know, he's a spiritual nut, you know. He talks about being in a UFO. The guy's really weird. He surfs, paints. He's got to be a screwball. And that kind of stuff, it doesn't affect that person in the sense so much as the people who are thinking those thoughts. Because they're focusing their mind on that negative relationship to their own expression of life. It's going directly into their psychic body all the time. Again, psychic body. Haven't got there yet. We'll get there. And this is what happens to those individuals. Bruno, everybody's familiar with him, right? Back in the Catholic Church, had him burned at the stake for claiming that there was life on other planets. Socrates, the Lion of Truth, killed. Trial of Galileo for saying things that weren't accepted at that time for the state. And then, of course, the crucifixion of Jesus. And at the time, Jesus had something like 150 followers, and they were all very, primitive people. He didn't write anything down. They were writing down what they interpreted his stuff to mean, except for I believe that his polarity at that time was Mary. And so that goes into a whole other realm, which I won't get into. But that she actually was a true polarity with Jesus and was able to bring through some of the true teachings that he was trying to relate, which at that time could not be in a scientific form because people didn't have a science. It had to evolve to a point where now we have a science, so we can understand what he's saying from a scientific perspective, and it completely changes the whole religious philosophy from one of believing in a certain deity so that you can be saved to one of being responsible for your own mind and thoughts and understanding the process of when you leave this physical body in death, that you're going to be functioning in a world which is totally encompassed with the thoughts that you are focusing within your mind, and you're going to go where those thoughts take you. So again, if that frequency is on a lower level, then that's where you're going to go to, and there's going to be people functioning on that level. People you don't want to associate with, who are drunks, who are murderers, who, not that those things in themselves can't be healed, and they are, but it's kind of like up to each one of us to realize that we really are responsible for how we gain the knowledge to make that giant step into the transition from this life to the next. And that's all it is, a transition from one dimension to another. Now this movie, Avatar, I think was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Can humans coexist with life on other planets? And I think that was the main message that I got from it anyway, was, well, if we don't change our mentalities, we don't change the aggressive methodology by which we go and take from people who are weaker than us what we want, then that's exactly how it would take place. Except, in this case, the good guys won. The Indians won. Now there's the sequel. Who knows what's going to happen in that, Maybe James Cameron will die and somebody will come in and go, hey, let's make the Americans win this time, or the bad guys, No, it was, I think, a really incredible example, and such a vast audience of people have been inspired by the unity of life, that incredible, infinite energy which connects everything, every one of us. And we're all made up of it. It's the substance of our very existence. It's the substance of everything in this room. We're all a part of it, and we're all connected to it. But what we do with our little slice of it, our understanding of it, can either take us in a progressive or in a regressive way. So that's the importance of utilizing our thoughts as understanding the nature of the importance of expanding our limitations. There are no limitations. There are no limitations. Only the ones we put on ourselves through our inability to understand a particular situation, which eventually we can grow and evolve and understand. Just like if you were in kindergarten and you went up into like college, well, you're going to have a really hard time, right? You're not going to understand anything that's going on. It's all going to just be a bunch of jibber jabber, and you're going to get really, feel very, very, well, I don't know. If you're a kindergartner, you might have fun. But, for the average person, it's going to be a really uncomfortable experience because you're with a bunch of people who are functioning on a much different level than you. And so that's what it's like going to these other planets. It's like, how do we go there? How do we get aboard that craft that you saw and travel there? By changing the frequency of our thoughts, of our spiritual nature, so that it is compatible with these individuals who are living in these higher levels of consciousness. So that's the key, is raising our frequency. So how do we do that? I don't know. No. We'll get a little bit into propulsion systems and mechanics of interstellar travel. Did you hear that? Now we know that in space there is no air, so there is no sound. No one can hear you scream. No, that's a whole different movie. What I'm going to do now, this is not my area of expertise, but I do have a very intuitive understanding that is fascinating to me in the way that I understood the way that these ships work, the more advanced ships. And these are propulsion systems that our science obviously isn't even close to devising yet, but have at least established the concept that it's possible. So that's the first step, right? First you got to have the idea that something's possible, and then you can build on that through people working towards making it reality. And so what that was the craft itself. Einstein has validated the fact that space-time is curved by powerful gravitational fields. So if you could create a powerful enough gravitational field, you could curve space-time around your craft so that inside the craft you could be traveling much, much faster than the speed of light. It wouldn't be even a relationship to it, to the space around you, because this gravity wave that you are encompassed in is literally transcending those barriers of the physics that we know as gravity, momentum, and inertia in a physical way. So the other one, wormhole technology, Einstein also, I think, had a lot of information or believed that wormholes were possible. But were they really, he was a theoretical physicist. I kind of like that term, because a lot of times I think, theoretical physicist. What does that mean? It means he's got a theory. Theory is kind of like an opinion. I got opinions. Okay, I'm a theoretical physicist. And in my theory, this wormhole travel, which we have seen in that movie Stargate and in the series, which I always liked, that it would be possible to be able to transmute ourselves from one location to another if we had that sort of technology. It's kind of like you take a piece of paper, flat piece of paper, make a dot on each end, bend that over so those dots are touching. All of a sudden that space in between disappears, and those two locations are right next to each other. Now, the science and technology around being able to do that, please don't come up afterwards and ask me any questions about that. I wouldn't have a clue. But, it makes sense that our technology is getting there, at least from a theoretical standpoint. Now here's another, obviously I kind of like the wormhole theory because, you know, I always like Stargate. It's too bad they're always got weapons and they're always going to go out and shoot and kill and fight. You know, but I guess that's what people like to see. That's what our planet has been so used to. That's what people want to see. But they had some great programs. And that kind of stuff that has gone on and does go on still. Now we're going through the wormhole. We went from the Milky Way galaxy. And of course, in a wormhole, you actually hear sound. And we came out to the Milky Way galaxy. Now we're going from the Milky Way galaxy through the wormhole. Wormhole travel, in case you didn't realize what it was. I've only said it about 100 times. And these are galaxies just flying by. Of course, you wouldn't see that. And then you're at the Andromeda galaxy. Oh, and there's our ship. So, again, that's another pretty advanced concept, technologically wise, scientifically wise, and it's in our future. But, you know, think about where we've gone in the last 100 years from, you know, the horse and buggy age to Tesla cars, and, well, they claim that the shuttle is, you know, supposed to be advanced. But I know I've heard enough people here today talking about some of the things that the government is and has developed in reverse engineering and other ways that they don't tell us about that is much more advanced. And that it almost, in fact, my wife, she always tells me, of course, now my wife, she believes anything that comes down the pike. So it's like I'm kind of the skeptic, I'm the Scully, and she's the Mulder. She believes everything, which is fantastic, and I love her for it. But you got to be more, you know, test those theories, test them out. Make sure there's evidence. I'm like one of those skeptic guys. But, you know, I mean, my experience is somebody would come up to me and say, well, who are you to be a skeptic, man? Look at that crazy crap you talk about. Okay, here is, now this is something that I actually could describe in a certain way. Central matter conversion chamber. The ship I was in, this is a circular tube that went through the central portion of the ship. And what that did was that it had a certain generator, a generating device is the way that I would describe it, that would react with a plasma inside that tube. Now, as that happened, this plasma would begin to radiate at an extremely high frequency. It would begin to build up this radiation, this vibration, this frequency that was so intense. The ship is made all of crystal. So it's like this, like a tuning fork, right? So as this intense field is built up within the central portion of the ship, it begins to vibrate out, and it basically comes in a unified relationship to the atomic structure of the craft, which is this crystalline material. And with that relationship, the ship now actually is transmuted to a higher frequency. So it's almost kind of like what you would call, what they call antimatter, I guess you could say in a way. The ship is no longer subject to the physics that we know of mass, gravity, inertia. It's functioning in another dimension. It can travel according to the processes that the propulsion system is utilizing, which would be this anti-gravity, instantaneously to other planets. Riding on these, there's these huge, you know, waves going and surrounding the entire universe, the electromagnetic lines of force. And so they can use those lines and kind of in an orbital path, they'll come around and, find the destination of the planet that they want to go to, and they can travel faster than the speed of light. Now, this is what our science has understood. Rapid interplanetary and interstellar spaceflight by means of space-time wormholes is possible in principle, whereby the traditional rocket propulsion approach can be abandoned in favor of a new paradigm. You know, a rocket is kind of like just a big bomb that's being controlled, right? It's like exploding at the end, sort of, and so it gives propulsion. And now I'm sure there's people who know a lot more. I'm not a rocket scientist. Again, I already apologize. Involving use of space-time manipulation. In this scheme, the light speed barrier becomes irrelevant, and spacecraft no longer need to carry large mass fractions of traditional chemical and nuclear propellants and related infrastructure over distances larger than several astronomical units. Obviously, that's the distance from the Earth to the Sun, I believe. In 1988, Morris and Thorne published an exact solution to the GTR equations, which is the general theory of relativity, which describe the creation of transversable wormholes in space-time by virtue of exotic matter research fields. Visser, 1995, another physicist, has extended and added to the knowledge base of this research. The essential features of these solutions are that wormholes possess a traversable throat in which there is no horizon or singularity. That means they can be utilized. You're not going to like going into a black hole. We all know that wouldn't be a good thing to do because it's a singularity, and by the time you get into the middle, everything gets pulled, apart. Although exactly what they are would be pretty fascinating to understand. I don't think anybody really knows yet. Now this is just a concept of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now here's a field of light. You can see the color here. So that's what we pick up with our eyes. And we have instruments, and this is the craft, as it changes, transmutes its frequency and can actually disappear from the physical dimension. And these are actually not quartz crystals. They are crystals down in Mexico, which are made of gypsum, I believe. And it's just cool because they're so big. I thought it made a nice picture. But the people who went down there and explored them found that it was very dangerous because they'd break off, and it's like if you got a death wish, go down there and explore around. But the concept that they grow these giant spacecraft on these other planets in these crystalline forms out of the realm of the gravitational field of the planet. So that's how they can actually establish the growth of these crystals. And then a part of the aspect that I didn't talk about, and something that I experienced in an amazing way, I'd have to go back to an experience that I had it was actually in dream state, but it was so vivid, so powerful, so real. And I saw myself coming to this planet on one of these spacecraft. It was this incredible light, this brilliance inside. And everyone in the craft, it was kind of like a whoosh with your mind. So your mind, the minds of the people in the craft, were directly related to the propulsion system. Because there's nothing more powerful than the mind. Because the mind is a fraction or a part of a much greater field of intelligence which goes on to infinity. So in other words, what we could call God is this infinite source of intelligence, and it's got more power than we could ever imagine or utilize. And so when you learn how to utilize that power in a way that you can transform it into some sort of propulsion with these spacecraft, then you're really living in an advanced world. And it's not going to be a place where you just float around on harps and everybody's happy and joyful. So everybody's functioning on a very intelligent, everybody there would be masters, like Einstein's, even beyond that. And that's just the frequency everybody functions on because they've evolved into it. They've done the work. They weren't given anything. They had to go through the process of evolution like we all do and finally get there. So anyway, back to the electromagnetic spectrum. You can see where there's just this tiny fraction of the visible spectrum, and then there's so many other levels, and they would go on beyond what we've been able to, realize as the microwave and the radio wave and the ultraviolet and all that, that what we see is just such a tiny fraction that it's good to understand that there's so much more going on that we just can't perceive with our physical senses, and yet we have the ability to begin to tap into it depending on our desire to know, to understand, to grow into that greater perception. Space isn't remote at all. It's only an hour's drive away if your car could go straight up. Anybody have a car that can go straight up? That'd be pretty cool. You'd probably be sorry, though. Because once you got up there. Okay, this is my vision of a planet where people live on a much higher level. And the way that it works is they build their cities in circular patterns. And it's funny because I was showing some of these paintings. A friend of mine was showing them to somebody in Laguna. And they looked at them, and they're all excited. Go, oh, wow, those are really cool, We might be able to do something with those. And they go, wait a minute. Those buildings look like mosques. What are you, some kind of Muslim terrorist? And so they didn't want anything to do with them. So it's not that they have any religious significance. It's just that they're built in circular patterns. I'm a carpenter, and I get to build round stuff a lot, or sometimes, and it always has just such a wonderful energy about it. It's just fun. It's harder to do, but we're talking here something that's made out of a material that is actually focusing the energy in a specific place on the planet. So they know where to build the city, how to build the city, and how to put it in to where it's going to benefit the greatest amount of people in the greatest way, just because of the fact that it carries this intelligence of the people who knew how to build it and where to build it. And you'd say, okay, we got these people living on these other higher developed planets. What about their politics? When you turn on the TV on one of these other planets, do you just see what we see, All these political hacks arguing with each other and, complaining that this person doesn't do this and this person doesn't do that? No, that's not it. What they do is they know, because they've all developed spiritually to a point where psychically they know who the teachers and the leaders are. And those are the individuals who are in charge, and those are the people that are doing the necessary work to forward the civilization and to help those people to develop in a positive way. They have flying houses. That seems like an incredible concept, but how would you like to be living in some neighborhood where your neighbors are really annoying, and you can just hop in your house and go to some other area and not have to go through all the hassle involved in moving? I tell you, I think it'd be pretty cool. But they do have flying houses on some of these other planets. They have that kind of technology. Okay, so now we're getting into reincarnation. This is a new program that's on. I don't know if anybody's seen it, Past Lives, new television drama. I just wanted to put that in there because I think it's really cool that they're coming up with some of this stuff for the future. Now this is just some stuff that I've done in this house that I built. And people who saw it, it was funny because they all thought, wow, that looks like a spaceship or something that would be in a spaceship. Healing yourself of the negative energies from past lives opens the creative potential which is inherent in all people. So this is how my creative ability has begun to be accessed. I wasn't an artist before the age of 28. I never had any connection with art whatsoever. After I had my experience in Puerto Rico aboard the Starship, I came back, and it was like I said, it was like I had been charged with this new energy. And I woke up one morning and I started drawing, and I felt that energy. I felt that wonderful, it was like being engulfed by this nimbus of beautiful spiritual power and energy. And so I continued doing it, and within about a year or so, I was painting paintings, and you know, it came really fast and progressed really quick. And this just shows how you can apply it to anything you do, you know, your work or wherever. And it's kind of like, have you ever had a day where everything just goes so positively, where you just can't seem to make a mistake, everything just flows? Has anybody had that? How did you do it? No, I've had that too. And what is happening is that you're in tune with a positive flow of your own consciousness. And you're not being blocked, because we all have blocks. The blocks are from the past, from our past lives. And I had a tremendous amount. Now this is the individual who I've learned more from and who really has given me the understanding that there is a psychic body. I validated and proved it to myself in my own experience, but the psychic body is the energy body, which is the true you. And this is just a depiction of it that I did as an illustration. And that carries all of the accumulated information from all your past lives, including the blocks. So now we're kind of zooming in to try to get a better perspective on just what this psychic body is. And there's my sweet wife, Serena, as she's standing there. And this is the psychic body. So this is the psychic body is made up of these billions and billions of energy waveforms, because they're recreating our physical body on a moment-to-moment basis. 1.5 million cells every second is being recreated. Where's it coming from? Oh, did you see that? Did you see that guy with the sword stab her, and you see that shock wave go out or stab him? So you would not believe that this sweet young lady is actually and has been a vicious, murderous gladiator in her past. You wouldn't believe that. No, actually, I don't think she ever was. She just kind of doesn't have it in her. This is a depiction of my past. This is the kind of energies that I had that had blocked me off. And I had to look at them. I had to go back. I had to re-experience them. What does this have to do with UFOs? This is the science that they have utilized and that they use to refine the psychic body by releasing themselves, by healing themselves, and the spiritual forces that are working with you, of these negative past blocks. And when I did that, began to do that, all of a sudden this art started flowing, this channeled information. I taught classes for years, you know, giving people readings about their past lives and stuff. And that was only because I was beginning to work out these negative impingements from my own past, where I had been involved in horrendous negative activities. I mean, these things are so difficult to really accept and look at because they're traumatic. Now we're zooming in again. I'm just going to kind of go back over the concept that energy vortexes contain life experiences as pure energy impulses. So those are all those energies. And when you look back and you can use the viewer to actually look within those little vibrations of energy, those frequencies, you'll see imagery of events that have taken place. Now this one is the conquistadors as they invaded Peru, and I was one of those conquistadors. This was incredibly difficult for me to accept and to deal with. I mean, it took me to the point of severe depression. It was so intense because I didn't want to believe it. And that's really all it takes. You just have to say, wait a minute, this is an energy that is in my psychic that's going to be there forever until I go back, look at it intelligently, utilize the knowledge that I have, and accept and release myself from that negative experience. And so Atahualpa was the last Inca. I don't know if you know that story, but he was the last Inca in Peru and was destroyed, and the Spanish basically took over. Pizarro was the main leader, and I was Bartholomew Ruiz, who was the ship's captain of the conquistadors. And that relates to this is the thing about past lives, is you can see it all around you. It's in the things that, the food that you eat, the places you go to, the likes, the dislikes. All these things are clues. You don't have to have a regression, although, if that's necessary, that's great. But these things came to me just through my own study and desire to understand what and how this process worked. So this was a book that was written by 50 of us, all about our experience with this particular lifetime. It's a pretty amazing story, believe me. And my experience was the very last chapter, and it was something. It was amazing. 2012, we were warned. Now, we saw this movie, right? So, are we all going to die in 2012, or was this actually what happened? I only had enough room to go up to 2012. Oh, that'll freak somebody out someday. Judge for yourself, which is right. And this is my book, Soulic Journeys. My wife made me put this in here. It's actually, I did it in 2012, but it basically kind of describes everything I've been talking about. I mean, I did it in 2000. But it's futuristic in the sense that it is the same information that I've been describing in this presentation. And my sweet wife, who is also an incredible Vedic astrologer, would you stand up, please? I could have never, really been involved and been able to continue my own progress in this very difficult field without her, being by my side and being my support. And she is an incredible Vedic astrologer, although I don't believe in astrology. No, she so many times she's been so right. And like I said, she can read me very easily. So she's not quite as good as those ones on the spaceship where they could tell everything that was going on. Or if she does, she doesn't say anything, like I said, because I'm the man. I'm tougher than she is. No. Okay, now what we're going to do now, I'm going to have a little bit of time for questions. We've got about 19 minutes. But the final presentation is going to be the finish, and this will be an accumulation. Did it just blow up? Accumulation of what I've basically accomplished, so to speak, with my own creative abilities since that time in 1978 up till this point. So if we could have that last little video started, the end, the finish, and oh, we need the sound too. Do you have the sound? There it is. It's sort of a meditation. Moses in the burning bush. That guy had me do that painting for him. Flip a pot of kettle. Atlantis. Yes, we were all there. Temple City. All rising to a great place is by a winding stair. These are some of my newer ones that I've been doing digitally, which is a lot of fun. This one too. I actually sold this one here. I didn't think I'd ever sell it. This is the weirdest painting everybody's ever seen. So now we have 15 minutes, and we want to open it up to questions. So anybody who has any questions, thank you very much. Appreciate you all hanging in there with me. I know it's been kind of long, but anybody who has any questions, come on up. Don't be shy. Everybody knows absolutely everything that we talked about, right? I'm sorry? I've had a lot of experiences that were more of a dreamscape experience, where I was taken aboard starships that were huge inside. I mean, they were like cities. They were gigantic. But what I've discovered in my own awareness is that it's not like somebody's going to keep coming and feeding you the pablum, or, in other words, it could actually become a negative thing where you become dependent on somebody else feeding you the information all the time. And so it's important that we gain, through our own responsible actions, the information necessary to progress ourselves.
Excuse me.
So yeah, I have had some experience. Yes?
I missed this part. Would you mind repeating exactly what you did? Yeah. Would you mind repeating exactly what you did to remove the past life energy blocks? Did you work with your chakras, did you say?
I tried to describe it on there pretty much as with these past life psychic shocks and traumas are directly impinged into the psychic body. So as you are interested in finding out about some block, like, okay, I can't, I'm normally going to be painting, suddenly I blocked off, I can't paint. Where's that coming from? Well, I have to search around and find out, well, why am I blocked off? Why can't I connect with that positive creative self that I normally am able to? And then I can trace it objectively and see that there was a specific thing that took place. Maybe I saw a television image of those guys going to Peru and going down and, basically destroying the Inca civilization. And so with that, I am able to now place where that block is coming from, understand it, work with it, and basically the teachers in the higher worlds help you to release that negative energy, but they want you to learn how to do it yourself. That's what's so critical. And so as you release it, as you objectify the experience, and you no longer, in a great way, it's just facing fears. I've faced so many fears in my life that that was the most beneficial experience I think I've ever had, is overcoming those fears. So I think most of it is just the fear of the guilt or whatever that negative emotion is locked within your psychic.
But just finding it didn't just release it.
You have to find it, and then you don't have to know exactly the experience, but just a general concept or general idea of what it is and where it's coming from. And normally it's directly related to your ego, your identity of self.
Of course.
So if you can humble yourself,
right.
Say, oh, now I see, I need to, maybe an argument with somebody else to see, oh, I can see their perspective now, or I can see why they're angry because I did this, I killed them in a past life, and then you're able to actually free yourself of that condition. And that other person also is healed of it. So it's a pretty amazing thing.
I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Hi.
Hello. Did you have a progression of other types of experiences before the actual event that you're describing and on the ship?
Yes, I did. Like I said, I was pretty blocked off. You know, my main concern when I was growing up was just kind of escaping all of the negative aspects of society, and I wasn't a real associative person, you know, with other people. In other words, I was shy. I couldn't really communicate with people very well, and so I began having experiences like I was talking about, where I would feel this wonderful energy. A lot of times it would be when a St. Anna wind was blowing. It was like I was really free. And in my dream states, most often, it would come through and I would feel this wonderful sense of even being in classes where I was learning things in a totally different way than I was used to the school systems here, where they were teaching me as it progressed actually further along. They were teaching me not how to paint by putting the paint on the canvas, but how to impinge the energy of a positive nimbus of power into the painting so that other people could receive that positive information. And so that's kind of the crux of it. But yeah, I started having out-of-body experiences, which I think really was the key to my first, you know, breakthrough in understanding that the physical body was just a vehicle, just like a suit of clothing that we wear in order to basically gain the information in this world as a means of learning how to progress ourselves into the next step, whatever it might be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Enjoyed your presentation very much. Thank you. After you had your experience on the ship and you said that's when your art started, did you also take art lessons, or would the art lessons have interfered with what was flowing through you? Because sometimes art classes from other teachers might interfere with what we really want to put forth.
Yeah, that's a good statement. I didn't really take any lessons. It just came so natural to me. It was just like I was just racing off, and because that creative hookup was so exciting. You know, what it felt like was that I was doing something illegal. You know, whenever I'd be doing it, it was like, this has got to be illegal. You know, it's just too much fun. And I didn't really take any classes specifically, but I don't think there's anything, you know, wrong with that. I think it's good to get around a group of people and to kind of be able to associate in a creative way. I think that's healthy, because, you know, oftentimes when you're painting, it's so isolated, you know, you're just sitting there, and that's why I couldn't paint for a living. You know, I got to go outside and look at the ocean and go to work and actually do something. But I do love to paint, you know, and it's always going to be a joy for me. But yeah, I think taking lessons, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But like you said, I think school in general, the way that it's focused, can, in a sense, limit your own ability. You know, like Einstein, what he was like failing in math in school, you know, and you see this with so many different people. It was just the time and the place didn't allow him to really be able to express himself freely and positively.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if there's no more questions, we will call it a day. I'll be out there. I have some books and some other stuff if anybody's interested. And thank you again, all of you, for being here and being a part of my presentation.
Thank you, Doug.